Welcome to Space Law. My name is Dr. Juji Carminati, and I have a doctorate in space law as well as an LLM in space, cyber, and telecommunications law. And I look forward to spending the next hour talking to you about how space law is regulated in the United States. First, let's talk about the fact that space law is regulated on 3 levels: internationally, nationally, and at the state level. We're going to jump into the international regime. Internationally, countries discuss issues pertaining to space law and can rely on and go to the UN Committee on Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, which is usually called COPUS. It was created in 1958 as an ad hoc committee. There are 70 member states, 2 permanent subcommittees, which is one is the scientific subcommittee and the other one is the legal subcommittee. And there are observers to the subcommittees that can go and attend and watch. And the observers usually come from organizations that have interest in or are involved in the particular area. So, for example, there is an organization called the International Institute of Space Law. I used to be a member of it, and I have attended COPUS, their meeting, the legal subcommittee's meeting, as a legal observer for the International Institute of Space Law. There is also the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs, very elegantly called USA, which implements the COPUS decisions. It assists developing countries, and it maintains the International Register of Objects Launched into Outer Space. And we're going to talk about what that means. Another organization, which is frankly one of the most powerful organizations on the planet, and I really mean that, is the International Telecommunications Union, ITU. The ITU is a UN agency. And here is why it's so powerful. It allocates radio spectrum and it allocates orbits of telecommunication satellites. So which countries get which radio spectrums and which countries get the orbits that they can put their telecommunication satellites into is governed by the ITU, which is why it is the most powerful organization on the planet, because even this conversation, this CLE that you are listening to, is in part thanks to whatever the ITU has done to allow satellite communications. There are other organizations, such as the International Astronautical Federation, which organizes the annual International Astronautical Congress. There's the International Institute of Space Law, which I have touched upon, and that one concerns itself with law and space law. And then there's the International Academy of Astronautics, which is the IAA, and this organization is an interest organization in science pertaining to space law. Now, there are 5 major outer space treaties, and they're kind of old, but they are the governing rules and laws with respect to space law, and so they're critical for you to know and to understand. So the 5 UN treaties are the Outer Space Treaty, the Rescue and Returns Treaty, the Liability Treaty, there's a treaty regarding registration, and then there's the Moon Treaty. And the reason that I am talking to you about them, and the reason that I put, if you see in the slides, Articles 5 and 8 of Outer Space comes after Rescue and Return, Article 7 of Outer Space comes after Liability, and so on and so forth, is because the Outer Space Treaty really was very, very overarching. It was very comprehensive. And what happened is that countries went back later and said, look, we talk about rescue and return in Articles 5 and 8 of the Outer Space Treaty, but we need to dig into these and create a little bit more specialist rules regarding that particular topic. And for example, liability is addressed in Article 7 of the Outer Space Treaty, but then countries came back and said, look, we need to come back with a liability convention that really delves into the topic of liability in more detail. And the reason I talk about it in this way is because of the concept of lex specialis, which is that the more specific rule, the more specific law will trump the less specific rule, right? So if somebody's interpreting the Outer Space Treaty and they want to talk about liability, they can't just rely on Article 7 because now there is a more specialized document that addresses liability in particular.